My name is Robin Tully with Tully Consulting Group. I'm an engineer and a QSD. I've been in the field either inspecting sites or helping write SWIPs since the original permit, the prior permit came about in 2011. And anyway, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you guys for coming. And we just want to try to share any kind of information that will help you as we dive into the new permit. I'm going to be looking up at the screen. So if my eyes are not looking at you, it's I'm looking at what I'm supposed to be talking about. So next slide. All right, so this is QSD Field Bootcamp 101, what QSDs should look for on the project site. I want to help you get a better understanding of the 2022 California Construction General Permit in terms of the expanded QSD requirements. I think this is a good thing. We've been writing SWIPs for a long time, and hopefully a lot of you are getting out in the field. This will help you with what to look for when you get out in the field. All right, so today our outline, we're going to talk about the QSD responsibilities, the main requirements for QSDs in the new permit. I also was very lucky to have a Waterboard interview with two gentlemen from the Regional Water Quality Control Board in the Central Valley. And they're going to share their key concerns in the field. I thought that would be very helpful for you because these are the regulators who can come onto your job sites and issue notice of violation. So I thought you'd like to hear from them what they want to see. And then I want to talk about some key field considerations, winterization and other site considerations with a lot of good photos for you guys. All right, so I'd like to overview. First off, I hope you guys can all see the slides. This slide is on the QSD responsibilities in the new permit. These are excerpts from the actual new 2022 CGP. The discharger shall retain a QSD from the beginning of the project through the notice of termination approval. So that is new in terms of them wanting that QSD involvement through the whole phase, and definitely a little more active role here. Number two, a QSD is required to assess how construction activities will affect sediment transport, erosion, and other discharges of pollutants in stormwater runoff in the SWIP design and implementation. The QSD is required to revise the SWIP to address potential problems identified by visual inspections, sampling data, comments from a QSP, or their own site observations. Remember, the site or the SWIP has always been a living document, and oftentimes, without the contract requirement for a QSD to go out in the field, sometimes, we write SWIPs and we're not able to actually be out there to see the site and see what's going on. So I think that this change in the permit requiring the QSD to be out in the field, I think will help you write a better SWIP and will help the team get better compliance. You're going to be able to see and help the QSP with your eyes and your experience. Number three, a QSD is required to include in the SWIP the name, email, and phone number of all the QSP trained delegates. And there is responsibility too to make sure that QSP delegate is properly trained. And the next, here's the site visits required. The discharger shall ensure that a QSD performs the following on-site visual inspections. A, within 30 days of construction activities commencing on a site. So you're going to see it right in that first month when it starts. B, within 30 days of a discharger replacing the QSD. So if you're coming on board and you're the new QSD who's going to be the field QSD, you need to make sure you're getting out there within 30 days. You can have a different QSD write the SWIP and a different QSD implement the SWIP. So just make sure those rules are clearly defined. C, twice annually, once August through October. That's primarily for winterization. And then once January through March, and that's seeing how the winterization is going and seeing how the rain is coming in, and if there's any changes we need to make to rebutton up or make things better. D, within 14 calendar days after numeric action level exceedance. So that means we're going to have good communication with the QSPs out there when an exceedance occurs. And E, within the time period requested in writing from a Waterboard staff. A QSP may perform the work of a QSP. So maybe you are the QSP out there. So in that case, awesome for you. You're getting a lot of site experience, and that site experience is going to make you a better QSD. All right. Next, so I want to go into this Waterboard interview. It's about 17 minutes. I'll come back afterwards and talk a little bit more about some of the key things that they talked about and show you some good photos. So anyway, these are two guys from the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board that I've seen on site multiple times, and they are very good and insightful, and they're just trying to be helpful here. So they came for this interview. So hopefully we can get it to play.
My name is Jorge Belgium.
Hi, Robin. It looks like the sound isn't working for the video.
And compliance and enforcement.
She say?
My name is Jorge Belgium. I'm water resources
Yes,
controlling
that's
here
good.
with the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. My primary role here is construction and water inspection.
And my name is Mike Fisher. I work with Central Valley Waterboard as well in compliance and enforcement. Deal with construction, industrial, stormwater, as well as wastewater treatment plants.
What are some top issues you see with site BMPs and compliance?
So it really depends on the time of year. This time of year, right now, we're in the end of August, it's 100 degrees outside today. Not a lot of big BMP issues that we see, but what we do see is waste management issues, garbage all over the site. Inactive areas that don't have any erosion control. So you get a hot windy day, you get a lot of wind erosion, you get clouds of dust coming off the site. Occasionally they get complaints about that. I'd say in fall, the biggest issue we see, and I don't know if this is really BMP related, but the challenge that a lot of sites see is they have a lot of open area going into the winter. And I'd say the scheduling BMPs, scheduling is usually listed as the first BMP in the SWIP, but we find it's pretty much ignored a lot of the time, where a lot of construction sites don't leave enough time to protect the site before those first rain events. So scheduling, I'd say, is one of the things that we really focus on and see a lot of efficiencies with in fall going into winter.
Mike approached this question really well. He broke it down per season, and we're going to see different efficiencies depending on what we can focus on the season, right? But one thing that is pretty, common and very prevalent throughout the whole year that we notice a lot, and we'll pick this out whether it's spring, summer, fall, winter, is the housekeeping, right? And this can manifest in very full dumpsters open during a storm event. It can manifest on garbage just being blown away to the winds during the hot months, right? And the housekeeping in general, it includes not only just construction waste, also concrete waste. As the seasons change, we focus on different things. Obviously, the primary thing when it comes to winter is that the site has effective erosion sediment control BMPs to prevent a discharge.
What erosion and sediment control BMPs would you like to see and when, especially winter?
One thing to keep in mind, and a lot of, and we notice this in a lot of construction sites, particularly risk level 1 sites, right, whose erosion sediment control requirements are significantly less than risk level 2 and risk level 3 sites, particularly for active construction areas, right? The trigger for risk level 2 and risk level 3 when it's raining is that the site be protected with erosion control at the time it starts raining, right? The trigger for risk level 1s is not really there for erosion control. But all the sites need to meet DAT VCT requirements, right? Which translates back into erosion and sediment controls. Does your site have BMPs that meet DAT VCT requirements? A lot of construction sites that are risk level 1 because they don't have that in the permit to protect active areas with erosion control when it's raining, they will not do it. We see this, right? But as the site is discharging and it's discharging very turbid water, at this point they're not meeting the DAT VCT requirements of the erosion sediment control beam. Where we see the biggest problem is in risk level 2 sites during the rainy season that don't have erosion control on active areas during a storm event and they're discharging water above the walls, right? That is going to be a trigger every time. Something that I would like to see as far as erosion sediment controls during the winter is make sure that if you're going to be impounding stormwater on your road cuts, that these road cuts have erosion control, because most sites will apply erosion control on the paths, and this is for land development projects, but leave the road cuts open, with the idea that they're going to impound stormwater and slowly then later discharge it. But a lot of times we get enough rain in a short amount of time, and the sites will start discharging on them.
Erosion control on risk level 2 and 3 sites, we see a lot of sites like just they're too late. They install it way too late. Give enough time to do the stuff. We drive out to sites during rain events that are spraying during rain events. And it's just a complete waste of money. It's not doing anything. Also, one thing that I've noticed on a lot of sites, you might have really good erosion control on the pads, but then there's somewhere where the water is going to leave that pad, go down a slope. A lot of times it's just left to chance. Okay, there's the low spot, now it's causing erosion down that slope. And it's completely well, it's protected with erosion control, but it's not protected for that channelized flow. And you get erosion and pick up a lot of turbidity there. So there's a few builders that do this. I wish it was a little more common, but they direct where they want the water to go down the slope. They'll install a down drain, they'll install some sort of armored channel that the water can go down the slope, and that really avoids picking up a lot of turbidity. It makes your samples a lot cleaner. If you're going to impound water, have a plan on how you're going to dispose of that water. There's quite a few sites that can hold water just fine most of the season. It'll infiltrate, it'll evaporate, and you're not going to have a problem. But there's a lot of sites that run out of capacity. And third, fourth, fifth storm, suddenly they need to dispose of that water. We've walked up on sites where they throw a sump pump in there and they just start pumping it. Sampling, yeah, maybe not. Is it going to a creek? In some instances, yeah, straight into the creek. If you're going to store water, that's fine, but make sure you have a plan on how to dispose of that water if you're out of capacity. And you should really know how much capacity you have. I don't think the permit really requires that you do that. You calculate the capacity before you start doing it, but you should have an idea. Hey, 3 inches of rain is coming. Can I handle this or not?
Right.
It shouldn't be a gamble. You should know. Also, if you're dewatering groundwater for construction for installing utilities, our region does have a separate dewatering permit. So some regions, the construction stormwater permit, general permit addresses dewatering, and they're covered under that. For our region, because our region has a specific dewatering permit, if you're installing wells and you're pumping out groundwater, you need to contact our office, and there might be a waiver if you're land applying. There might be a separate NPDES permit, general permit, if you're dewatering and it's going to the storm drain or to surface water. The third option, which works in the Sacramento area, is the sanitary sewer district. Most small water district or sewer districts, they can't really handle extra clean water, so they won't even, and they'll say no right away. But if you're in the Sacramento area, we've seen 1 million gallons a day of groundwater being pumped into their sanitary sewer system under a pre-treatment permit, with the regional, the secondary regional standard, yeah. I've seen that be an effective way of disposing of water there, and it's a lot cheaper and easier to comply with than getting our standalone NPDES permit, and a lot quicker.
Do you guys see adequate use of fiber wool on slopes to break up slope plates, or do people just come out and spray?
The requirements are written pretty clearly in the permit. I'd say in reality, we look at it a little bit differently, at least we do in our part of the region. If you're on a cut slope and it's pretty rocky and there's not much potential for erosion, trenching in those fibrils is going to probably cause more problems than just applying the FM or somehow protecting it. If you're on a hill slope though, top of the slope,
Shoot, bear with us, guys.
Slope, you know, every 15 feet or whatever the spec is based on the slope. We don't see that applied consistently.
You see better erosion protection with more use of the fiber rules.
I'd say yes, no. The water will pond up behind it and then find a low point and it'll cause erosion right below that. But that erosion usually stops at the next fiber. So you're creating these little rills instead of one big one top and bottom, and then keep getting bigger and bigger during storm events. So, you know, you're still gonna have some erosion down slopes if you're not providing a protected armored way down the slope. But installing fiber rolls on field slopes for the spec is what we differ.
So now the new permit is going to require QSDs to come out to the site at certain times. When they're coming onto a site, what are some key takeaways for QSDs for how to achieve better permit compliance, or let's say things you may want to see done better?
QSDs will write a SWIP. They have a plan in mind. They envision something at the site, but they never see the site once it starts construction, or very rarely. You know, for us, I think what we want to see the QSD do is look at the site during the different stages of construction and make sure that their plan kind of matches the reality of what they're seeing in the field. If something that they planned isn't working, that's your opportunity to change it. You look at some SWIPs and there'll be 2 or 3 discharge locations, you know, determined 2 years before the project starts. You go out there during storm event, there might be 8 discharge locations that, you know, from a Google Earth image and, you know, the plans, you can't really tell where they're gonna be. But putting eyes on it, the QSP should be doing this also, but the QSP putting eyes on it, they should really fine tune their plans as the project continues. Kind of cut off any problems with this started.
This was are submitted when they apply for the permit, you know, they typically have your build conditions on the drawings, right? And that's the guiding document that's going to tell the contractor, you know, what EMPs you're going to deploy. And you have streets and, you know, and storm drain inlets, you know, with DI protection and the construction entrance. That reflects pretty much, you know, the end of the project, right? When they're going to, if this is on a development project, when they're going to vertical construction, right? In the meantime, like Mike said, you know, there's a lot of phases in there, right? You have your rough grading, and then you have your clear and grubbing, right? And then you have your mass grading, right? You have rough grading, you go into your road cuts, and then you bring in your utilities and all that stuff. And all of this, it may be overkill, you know, to have drawings for each one of these stages, but QSD should definitely know, okay, when things are changing and the changes that they need to make on their guiding document for whoever's going to be on site to deploy. I think this is what the QSP is going to be focusing on when it's out there doing inspection, right? The Army Perimeter Control said where they should be, right? A lot of times, like you mentioned, contractors will go out there and start clearing more area than it's actually shown on the plans. I issued a lot of notices of non-compliance on sites that were under an acre, but the subs were out there and they started opening more ground than they should have, and all of a sudden the municipalities letting me know, I think this is over an acre now. I'm like, oh, well, they need to sign up for coverage. And I'm just bringing this up to illustrate that, you know, a lot of times what we have in the initial drawing is going to change as the project moves on. I think it's definitely beneficial for a QC to be out there, you know, as we go into the rainy season months to evaluate site conditions, and maybe the BMP plan may change completely, right? Something we started doing is to go out there and to identify sites that are starting late for one thing, right? They're starting their grading in October, right? And it's a large site, it just means a lot of open area as we go into the rainy season. So I think it's very important to be very beneficial for our QSD to be out there before the rainy season to get an inventory of what's out there that PMP is needed, the states that the construction is in, because it may not pan out according to the schedule, and develop a winterization.
So the term winterization plan, you can search for in our permit, it doesn't.
No,
It's something that we ask for kind of informally after inspections. If we get to a site in, you know, first week of October and they started grading 2 weeks ago and there's 50 acres open, that's gonna cause a little concern on our end. So we're gonna ask for a winterization plan that basically communicates to us, you know, once it starts raining, what's the slope gonna look like? What is gonna be active through the winter, what's gonna be inactive, how you can protect the inactive areas. And also, and how you can protect the active areas before a storm event, but also how long is it gonna take you to protect those areas? You know, sometimes storms come up, you know, one day it'll say no rain and then it's raining pretty hard. That's pretty rare, it does happen, but usually you kind of have a sense that, yep, something's coming, it might be 5 days out, 4 days out, 3 days out. How much lead time do your installers need to actually protect the site?
Right.
And that's the shortcoming we see a lot where people work out the other day and it starts raining and then they try to protect the site and it's just, you need to plan it.
Any other thoughts you might have for QSD for achieving best compliance?
This is a district permit, right? So winter or rainy season is really our primary focus. Something that to me is always important is start reducing your risk, you know, as we get into that season. A lot of times sites get into trouble because they're always waiting to either install that base rock or do that next lift or the last lift, and the roads end up staying open through the winter. And that creates a lot of problems for a lot of sites. They never seem to get, you know, I think the story is, oh, we just need 2 more weeks, you know, in 2 more weeks, and we would have had the whole site paved. If it looks like you're not gonna get there, I would say at the very beginning, say this is an autumn thing, right? Whatever we get done up to this point, we get done, right? After that point, let's start reducing our footprint, let's start reducing our risk. And I think that's really important to talk, obviously, with the project owners and the rest of the other project managers. We need to start thinking about this, you know, how far can we really get so that we don't get cut behind. What happens is once it starts raining and you haven't implemented EMPs, you're just bleeding until it stops raining and you're able to do what you should have done 3 weeks before.
Yeah, the permit definitely allows you to continue construction through winter. We're not saying,
Yeah.
you know, hey, October 15th, stop it.
No.
You can grade through winter if you put in the EMPs before rain events, and it's gonna be pretty costly to have big areas open through the winter. So the smaller your disturbed area is in winter, the easier it's gonna be, and probably cheaper it's gonna be as far as EMPs go. I know there's always other concerns with schedules, there's replanting that's changes on reading milestones, but yeah, shrink it.
Excellent. We just thank you for coming today. I think you've given us a lot of good insight, a lot of good to think about. And yeah, you've been able to head with points that industry.
Well, we can help.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we are back on. I'm gonna check the time, see what time we have, because I do have a lot of good pictures to show you. It's 1:22, good, so I got a lot of time. All right, so next slide. All right, so we want to continue on with what the Waterboard guys were sharing and talk about some key field considerations. So you're the QSD, you're going on site. What are you gonna look for? I want to talk about winterization that they were hitting on. And some other site considerations. So we're just trying to help you design a better SWIP and help you keep your client compliant. All right, so here's some key takeaways that I want you to think about. The QSD is the lead designer of the SWIP and selects the BMPs and where to put them. The QSP that's going out is just supposed to monitor and make sure that what you've shown is being implemented. But what if that needs to change? Like Jorge had said, you know, what if the site is in a different stage and it doesn't look anything like what the drawings look like right now? So you need to make sure that we're designing, you know, for what's out there right now. What are the field conditions and the stage that they're in? The QSP can't really do that. So you're it, buddy. We need you out there. Also, the QSD should analyze drainage patterns and sampling points. Where is that water going to go? You know, give it a good designated flow path. Make sure it has a safe point to go without eroding slopes and key points of your site. And then figure out your sampling points too. Did maybe we took a first pass in the initial SWIP, but maybe it's not at that stage yet that you thought it was going to be at. So Always keep an eye on the drainage patterns and sampling points. Other things, look for what's missing. You have a lot of experience and knowledge from erosion control, and maybe a lot of you have an engineering background, so you've taken hydrology and hydraulics courses, and you have a good idea what the site needs. Oftentimes it's the hardest part for the QSP to see what's missing. Anyone can go to fiber roll and say, oh, that fiber roll is damaged and needs repair, but it's much harder to see, oh, what fiber roll is missing. You know, where do I need fiber roll? Where do I need silt fence? Where do I need erosion control? Your eyes on the site are going to be huge. So I challenge you and hopefully inspire you to go help the site. You want to look for runoff control, dewatering, as they mentioned. Where are you dewatering? Maybe you want to maybe some detention ponds that you had in summer. You know, maybe those aren't going to be big enough for the winter. You got to think about that too. You need to do some quantity calcs there if you're relying on some kind of detention pond. Biggest thing, especially winterization, you want to look for that erosion control. What's missing? And that is a huge one because as Mike and Jorge said, you definitely want to encourage your contractor to plan ahead to get as much erosion control on before the winter starts, so that they're working with a smaller open area for those sudden storms that come up. And you definitely want to look again at the sediment control, what's missing, or maybe what's not working that you designed that's just maybe needed to be beefed up, or you know, maybe there's a flow paths that need some kind of sediment control BMPs. You want to look at run-on control as well. Are there major points of run-on coming onto the site that need to be addressed to get it safely through or around your site without damaging anything? Also look for those stabilized entrances and exit points. You do want to encourage your contractor to think about minimizing those. Having 10 active in and out points on a large job site in the winter is going to make a big mess and a lot of headache for tracking out mud. So maybe work with them on consolidating down those entrance and exit points to ones that really make sense and that they can control better. Maybe 2 or 3 instead of 10. Another thing, and this is big, is, and I'll put highlight it again, downsizing your DSA, your disturbed soil area. So coming into wintertime, having 100 acres or 50 acres open just isn't going to be realistic to button up before a storm that's coming in 3 days. Some large slopes really could take 2 to 3 weeks to get buttoned up with fiber rolls and erosion control. Also calling your sediment erosion control provider in advance, because a lot of them are booked up in October. So make sure, get a plan and get on the schedule ahead of time. That'll really help. Another thing that you should do is check your end dates and reevaluate the R value. This happens a lot. Construction goes longer than anticipated. And it may not be the same end date that you had planned in the SWIP. And sometimes changing that R value, look at the R value. And let's say now a job that was supposed to end in August is now entering in December or March of next year. That's definitely going to drastically change the R value. And it could even take a risk level 1 site up to a risk level 2 or a 2 to a 3. So definitely check the end dates and get a COI and SMARTS with an updated risk assessment. Very important. So pretty common. Jobs mostly go longer, never, I would say never, but rarely shorter. The other thing, sorry, I have a typo here. You want to keep the SWIP updated with amendments. So this is a live document, and you want to try to keep it updated for those major stage changes or anything you're seeing that you want to implement differently, especially in wintertime. A winterization plan this time of year is very important. It's gonna help your client get the site protected and hopefully avoid costly fines. All right, so I got a lot of good photos for you. So you're the QSD, you go on site, and let's say it's October, and you see this giant slope. What's missing? Erosion control. This is a huge slope. This probably needs fiber rolls every 10 feet. It looks like a 2-to-1 slope, so every 10 feet at least. And it's also tracked in part, it's tracked the wrong way. Some of it's tracked sideways, where it's encouraging the rilling going down. Some of it was tracked up and down. You want to make sure that the slopes are properly prepped and getting ready for erosion control. All right, so here's kind of a before and after, just something to think about. You show up in October and the site looks like the photo on the left. That looks okay for summertime, right? It's got your perimeter control, that silt fence down at the bottom. It's got some fiber rolls mid-slope to break up the slope lengths. But again, it's missing erosion control. So come winter time, this is not going to cut it. So sediment controls, they can stop maybe those small, little 1/2-inch rainstorms in the summer. But come winter time, when you're getting back-to-back storms, or maybe we're going to have an atmospheric river again and it dumps 7 inches of rain in a day. That happened. That you're not going to cut it without erosion control. So you really got to lead your client ahead of, to get that erosion control ahead of time. So, October, definitely by Thanksgiving, hopefully by mid-October, but okay, maybe stretch it into November, but definitely not past, November. You don't want to go into the winter without erosion control. So we want your sites looking like the photo on the right, where you've got that effective combination of erosion and sediment controls. So your sediment controls are your BMPs, like your fiber roll and your silt fence that are helping to keep the sediment from migrating offsite. But you really need that erosion control. That's the key thing. That's going to help keep your sediment on site where it is. So that's your hydro seeding and your bonded fiber matrix, hydraulic mulch, blankets, etc. And we'll talk about that. Okay, so I want to scare the pants off you a little bit. What can happen when you don't have erosion control leading into the winter? This can happen to you, and I don't want this happening to you. This was many years ago. This was that same site that I had pictures on the slide before, where they just weren't able to get the erosion control on prior to winter in time. They had started late in the season due to their contract. That's just how it was. They were starting, I think, September. And then by the time they called the erosion control guys, the subs just weren't able to get out there until after a couple rains had passed. And unfortunately, this led to a lot of turbid water getting into a creek downstream. And the Waterboard showed up Monday morning at 7 a.m., followed it all the way down the slope to the creek, and this resulted in a $130,000 fine. That was 2016, and I'm here to tell you that nowadays the fines that you're going to be that your site could possibly be facing, and you'll get drug into that are in the millions. So I don't think anything's out of the norm now to see something where the Waterboard's going to come at your client for 1.2 to 1.6 million or something like that. So you really want to avoid this. I don't want this happening to you. So let's think ahead. Let's get out there and see what we can help people do for winterization. All right, so here's some good examples. So this was the picture on the left is from a Caltrans project. This was a vertical clearance project on Highway 80. They actually had a good combination of erosion and sediment controls. Again, it took took us a little bit to get there. This wasn't immediate. This was an iteration of a couple rainstorms and trying to come up with better ideas and better BMPs and more BMPs. But this is an excellent example of what we would love your site to look like. This has the silt fence at the bottom to catch anything before going off site. This had fiber rolls every 10 feet on that 2-to-1 slope to break up the slope lengths. This did have bonded fiber matrix hydraulic mulch on it. This did not have seed because it was just a temporary measure. They still had work to finish. So this was just to protect it over the winter. So it was just hydraulic mulch without the seed. And then that gravel bag berm was to replace the asphalt dike that couldn't go in yet because they were raising the bridge and repaving it. And then it would have a new dike eventually. So that gravel bag berm was a really good temporary run-on control that I think is very important. And if you did nothing, the two things that were probably the key things were getting that run-on control, that gravel bag berm and the silt fence. But all of these BMPs obviously did the best. And this was probably one of our most successful slopes after we got it fully buttoned up. The project on the right, there's just a couple pictures of some orange wildlife fencing that was just keeping the contractor out of certain areas, but also keeping the wildlife from getting in. So that's something to think about too. You want to make sure that you have your ESA areas marked out. And the picture on the right was some hydraulic mulch very thickly applied on a project on Highway 12 near Rio Vista. So that was very important. It was applied prior to the rain. And you can see two different colors. The yellow brown is some hydraulic mulch that was applied beforehand, and then it needed some touch up. So they came in and touched it up. You will need to touch up over the winter. Sometimes the hydraulic mulch just lasts a couple storms. especially if it's not applied right or it's applied thin, and you got to come and reevaluate, you know, do you need to reapply it? So that does happen, especially you have a rough winter. You're going to get a lot of rilling and erosion, and it could wash that hydraulic mulch away. So be thinking about that. Here's some other things you want to look at. You know, you want to try to get your client to cover up or remove stockpiles prior to the winter. This photo on the left is a really good stockpile cover that was on Highway 80 many years ago in Sacramento. And it had perimeter control BMP, the fibril around it. And it also had gravel bags weighed down with ropes, keeping that plastic down. So that's very important too, because you don't want to be wrangling with plastic all winter. So the more anchorage you can get on it ahead of time, the better off you'll be. The photo in the middle is, you know, we want to tell them to put their waste in covered leak-proof waste bins. And so this was a big waste bin on a Highway 50 project that's an active project right now in Sacramento. And they were, even though we were under the bridge, in case rain came sideways, we were trying to encourage them to cover the bins at all times after shift, or especially for rain. And the photo on the right is you want to make sure to have your tell clients to really downsize their footprint of what's out in terms of chemicals, and you want to have all your chemicals in covered secondary containment. So you want to be thinking about that too. You know, if you can get your client to consolidate and downsize their staging areas and their chemical and other material storage, that'll just make it a lot easier when they got to go cover everything when it rains. All right, some other considerations. Next slide. These are just some examples, maybe what you don't want to see in the winter time out. These are some small kiddie pools for washouts. Kiddie pools are okay in certain areas, but you really want to have a big official concrete washout that can handle all the concrete that they're going to be handling. So think about that. And then like the Waterboard said, housekeeping, that's always a big consideration. You really want to have your client keep up on their housekeeping. This is also, you know, a Waterboard attractant. So your site looks like crap from a drive-by. It's going to encourage them to come in. So having your site looking good and clean is pretty important. Also, that waste, when rain hits it, whatever the chemicals are that are in there are possibly contacting the stormwater and running off. So that's a source of pollution. So good housekeeping is very important. All right, so erosion control. So you're the QSD. So I challenge you to pick the right type of erosion control for your site. The QSP is not technically responsible for that. So you should be determining the type of erosion control in your SWIP. And then again, coming out to the site and making sure to adjust that if something is needed. So I'm just talking about the major types here. We've got our geotextiles blankets. We've got plastic cover. Obviously the Waterboard doesn't want to see a lot of plastic cover, but there is a time and a place for it. When you've got an active slope you want to protect for rain, and then they want to work on it a couple days later after the rain, that plastic will keep that slope dry. So there is a time and a place for plastic. Number 3 is temporary hydraulic mulch. That's a really good one for large areas, and one that we really encourage over the winter time to plan ahead. There's hydroseeding, which is your hydraulic mulch with the seed included. That's your permanent erosion control generally. Mostly you're not going to use that for temporary measures, but you might have some areas that are ready. And if you have areas that are ready, absolutely get your permanent hydroseeding on them. That'll help. We have straw mulch. We've used it in limited cases. There are a time and a place for it. And then wood mulch. Wood mulch is also a consideration for erosion control. All right, let me check the time and see how we're doing. All right, 1:38. All right, we're doing good. All right, so here's what temporary hydraulic mulch looks like. Very good for covering large areas. You just want to make sure you get it implemented ahead of time, ahead of rains, because it needs a day or two to set up. Caltrans specs, for example, will actually have a specified minimum time frame. So if you apply it too early to the rain, or even in the rain, one, it's just not going to set up well. And 2, you might not be getting paid for it. So, or your client might not be getting paid for it. So pay attention to that. You really want to encourage that to be applied as early as possible. Blankets are excellent. They are a great way to really protect your soil without a lot of hassle over the winter, because you're not going to be able to go respray erosion control. These are an excellent way to get erosion control. but, make sure that they're keyed in properly. So you want to have a key trench at the top, and then they're rolled down the slope and overlapped, and pinned in. Plastic is, this is a great way to protect an active slope that the contractor wants to get in and work on in a couple days after the rain, so that there is that time and a place for plastic. Again, do make sure that that is keyed in properly at the top of the slope. Otherwise, you can get water underneath that plastic, and it can be as if your plastic wasn't even there. So that key trench on your plastics and your geotextiles is hugely important. This is what some permanent hydro seeding looks like. This is those fiber rolls for slope interruption on the slope. So this is like a gold standard for erosion control. Again, think about it. If you're doing this temporary, you're just taking the seed out and you're just doing hydraulic mulch. But you really still want those fiber rolls. Don't forget about those, even in your temporary erosion control. I know contractors don't like to spend the money, but they really do help and prevent rilling and slow down runoff from causing those major gullies. Straw mulch. This is some permanent erosion control. There was some hydro seeding, and the spec called out for straw mulch on top. Straw mulch to be effective should be tackified. So don't think that the contractor can just spread it out there and it's going to be effective. It really needs a good coat, like 4 to 6 inches, and it needs to be tackified on the top. But then it can be great. This straw mulch actually was very effective at establishing the hydro seeding, because it was giving a nice cushiony blanket to prevent a lot of the friction of the rain hitting the soil and dislodging soil particles. So it's protecting that soil just like a blanket. But also it was providing some good ground cover, keeping that seed warm until it got established. So straw mulch can be a great thing. And wood mulch. So let's say you have a site where you've trimmed or cut out some trees, chip them up in place, save that wood mulch, especially over winter time. A lot of the contractors have to get in and cut down trees before the birds start nesting in them. So the contractor might have to go in and work in the winter on a site. I would encourage them to keep those wood chips there, because they make great and free erosion control. Sediment control BMPs. So these are very important. They should be there all year round. There are different ones for your toolbox. So I'm listing the most common ones here that you're going to need to plan for and should be already in your SWIP. Silt fence, check dams, fiber rolls, gravel bag berms or earthen berms, street sweeping, that's a sediment control as well, and storm drain inlet protection. So fiber roll, I'm running out of time, so I don't want to go too in depth. If you want these slides, I can give them to you. These are some key takeaways. But the important takeaways on fiber roll is just make sure it's ideally on a level contour. It's got to be trenched in and staked in properly. And just make sure that they maintain it and that use it for those slope interruptions. Don't just have a fiber roll at the top or the bottom. Have it every 10 feet if you have a 2-to-1 slope. In the BMP fact sheets, there should be a table for different slope inclinations, what fiber roll spacing is adequate. Silt fence. Don't put your silt fence on the slope. Don't put it in a flow line. Those are some key takeaways. Make sure that it is properly trenched in and staked in. Make sure your joints are overlapped. Make sure the stakes are on the right side. One of the pictures on the bottom slide is the stakes were on the inside. That was done for wildlife purposes, because they didn't want the critters, climbing up the stakes if they were on the outside and getting into the job site, mice and such. But just think about that. If then it's an ESA fence, it's keeping out your wildlife, but can't really use it as a silt fence. So if you are using this for silt fence to impound water, that's what it's doing. Make sure those stakes are on that back side. So those are just some key takeaways. Make sure you put it at your bottom of the slopes, far enough off the toe of the slope so that if any erosion that's coming down isn't going to immediately overtop the silt fence. Give a little space there at the toe for that sediment to collect before it starts backing up against the silt fence. Gravel bags. Gravel bags are a great check dam, and they also can make great inlet protection. They are very good at keeping sediment and water out. So do be very careful with where they are placed. If you do use them as a check dam, make sure that they follow the details and take out like the center bag or two, so that the water can actually go over the check dam without being too impounded and going around the sides and causing erosion around the sides. So gravel bags are a great tool. That one picture that I had prior, and I'll show it again, they were using as a temporary dike for where your AC dike is missing. So they can be very, very useful. These are always great too, as your catch-all emergency BMP. You know, have the contractor have a pallet or two of gravel bags on site for problem areas over the winter. Storm drain inlet protection. This should be in all year round. The thing I want to mention here is to avoid filter fabric in the wintertime. You can use filter fabric in the summertime to protect your inlets, say from paving and paving materials, and you don't want anything getting into those inlets. But it's not a Caltrans approved BMP. So if you're on a Caltrans job, don't use filter fabric, use an approved sediment bag. And then definitely by winter time, you know, any filter fabric that you had in place, make sure that you put in those sediment bags and take the filter fabric out, because the filter fabric will block flow. And wintertime, you have to have your water flowing. I mean, unless you can impound everything and you've done the calculations to show that you can adequately contain all your water. I'm going to tell you, most sites can't over winter, just don't have the space. So you got to make sure to, you know, get your erosion control. So keep your dirt in place in the first place, and then have those inlets protected properly so that they can drain, and hopefully, you know, filtering out turbidity. Stabilized construction entrances. You want to make sure that if they didn't have them in place, which they should have had them in place all year round, but you want to make sure that they do have them in place for winter. And again, make sure they're consolidated about where they're entering and exiting. And it's not good to have, you know, 10 sites entering and exiting. That's going to be a lot of mud and track out control. Very costly sweeping in the winter. Mud's very hard to get off the pavement. It pancakes in and takes a lot to get off. So encourage contractor to really downsize their entry and exit points. You know, maybe one, maybe 2 or 3. Obviously, long highway jobs, that's pretty difficult, but do they really need to be working everywhere on that highway job? You know, have them consolidate their plan, their footprint down, and their entry and exit points down. So that's going to save a lot of money. I'll talk about run-on control measures. So I talked about them before. That gravel bag berm is one very good example to keep that run on from the roadway from going over the slopes. So you want to address your sources of run on to make sure it doesn't come in contact with the work area. So you as the QSD, go out there and see what's missing. What run on control measures are you missing? Here's some photo examples. What can happen when you don't have good run on control. This was the vertical clearance job where we thought we had it in good control. It had hydraulic mulch, it had the fiberol, it had some silt fence in place, but the dike was missing and a lot more water came off the bridge than anticipated. It was a heavy storm. I got there and I was monitoring it, and it was like a 2-inch rill. And I was like, shoot, well, we'll have to get something back, you know, when it dries out and we can get back here and work on it. But what happened though is a thunder cell came through, and as I was driving away, I think I was 15 minutes down the road, I went through this thunder cell and it was just dumping buckets, and I went, oh crap, what's going to happen? And sure enough, I came back the next day, and those 2-inch reels were 2 feet reels, due to the water coming off the bridge and going down the slope. Luckily, it mostly was stopped by the silt fence. It got beyond a little bit and we had a little bit of cleanup, but we talked to him about getting out gravel bags for that run-on control, and that worked awesome. That kept the water off the slope and made sure that the water was going down to an inlet instead of over the slope. So that run-on control is super important. So think about that. Other sources of run-on, this particular job, this is a highway job where this again, the plan is there's going to be storm drainage there and a new roadway there, but it's not there yet. They're grading it. And going into winter time, you know, we need some temporary drainage. So think about that. Your new road isn't there yet. So here's a culvert outletting out of the job site. We needed to figure out a way to get it safely through the job site without causing erosion. The photos at the right are just some examples, not that particular job, but different jobs where we had the culverts coming into the job site, and we appropriately protected it and gave it a safe flow path that was protected to get through the job site. There's that run on again coming through the job site. This was on Highway 50 many years ago. So 65th Street. Another thing that you got to think about is your slope conveyance. Do you have water coming over your slopes that needs to go over that slope because maybe the down drain isn't there? So maybe you're putting in a down drain, designing that down drain in, or you're giving it a temporary flow path. This was an example of, we had some runoff coming off the roadway and it needed to go down there. So there was an overside drain there before. So we gave it a flow path. We lined it with plastic. Maybe not the super best example, a pipe would have probably been better, but there just wasn't the way to get that configured in. So give the water a safe flow path down slopes without causing erosion. So think about where do you need those during winter time. All right, that's probably all we have time for. So there's a lot of other considerations, but hopefully these are some big takeaways for you. And again, these slides will be available after the Stormwater Awareness Week is done. And definitely email me. My email's there. We've got a checklist too for you of what to look for on site that could be helpful, kind of taken from a Waterboard perspective, because we've been on some Waterboard audits and we've got a list of the questions that they asked. So feel free to email us and we'll get you something over. So just get out there, help the site, do your winterization amendment, think ahead, and keep that site in compliance.
Awesome. Well, it looks like you have a couple questions, Robin, so I'll go ahead and ask those. We have one that says, can the initial 30-day QSD inspection be at the same time as one of the 2-time annual inspections?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have not encountered this yet because we actually just have our first permit in right now. Or I'm sorry, our first new permit project just starting right now. So I have not been able to ask the Waterboard that question. I'm wondering that myself. I don't know. I think I would do this from a practical perspective. Perhaps if you're there at the same time, it's August, it's within 30 days of construction, and it's August, September, October. And you think your site isn't going to change much going into October, then it's probably sufficient. This is just, again, I'm not responding for the Waterboard, but just my takeaway. Think about it from a practical perspective. If you're there, okay, the job started in July or August, so you're there in August, and then a whole bunch of work is going to happen between now and wintertime. And it's going to look a lot different, say come October, then maybe you want to come back. I would plan to come back. So I think it just is probably going to depend on your site. And I imagine the Waterboard is probably going to give you a similar question, because they really want good outcomes here, and good planning for the wintertime. So maybe it's just more what's going on at your site. But very good question.
Awesome. And it looks like we have a comment that says, commonly forgotten by stormwater professionals are run-on controls. The Central Valley discussed it in the video, and have run-on directed through a pipe or around site altogether. So
Yeah,
we have a comment with that.
Yep, I think that's a super important comment, because run-on, like those pictures I was showing you of those slopes that got damaged from run-on, that could have easily been prevented had the run-on been there prior to the rain. So that's super important. And that's one of the, a good thing for the QSD to look for. That's one of those things that you as the QSD are going to have more experience knowing drainage patterns, knowing where water can flow. You're going to have more experience and insight into where that water is going to go, and what issues you're going to have as a result of that. So.
Perfect. And the final question, in your construction site entrance slide, was that yellow pad a TC1 construction site entrance / exit BMP for road projects?
Oh, that was the yellow FODS mat, I think you're talking about?
I think so.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so we've been using in Sacramento area, we've had many, well, not just it's Sacramento, but our area, the Bay Area and the Central Valley. We've been using those. We have one project that uses them a lot, actually. They are really useful. They're expensive. God, I think they're like $3,000 a thing now, or something ridiculous, at least to the grand, but they're not cheap. But yes, those are the FODS mats. They can be very useful. You just want to make sure that you still want to implement at least enough width of them and length of them to adequately clean the tires off. So you want to try to get 50 feet length if you can. You can also use them in conjunction with rock and those, maybe put them on top of the rock at the end. But anyway, just yeah, they can be a good tool. They work really well, actually, if you have a paved lot. Let's say you're staging, you have a staging area that's on a paved lot, but you still have some dirt coming in and out and you're tracking. Those can be very useful because they can be set on the pavement.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Robin. If anyone else has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. But we're waiting for those. If you missed any part of this workshop, I know some people joined in a little late or had to leave early. It has been recorded and we will post it on our website within the next 24 to 48 hours, but definitely by the end of the week. So be sure to check back at stormwaterawareness.org and also register for any of the other workshops that are coming up. We have one more for today on erosion control BMPs versus passive treatment. So that's going to be a great one. That starts at 3 p.m. Pacific time. But thank you to Robin and the Tully team. You guys are awesome. This was very informative and we're so excited for the work that you guys are doing and also for the remainder of this week. So thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. All right, thanks Rebecca.